Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku was a Hyde from the Netflix series Wednesday, but Izuku is an enhanced Hyde. He is stronger, more muscular, and faster and more aggressive, and can regenerate from anything and gets stronger when he gets anger, and instead of him being in verse he is in the Rosario vampire verse, and he doesn't need a master, and Izuku like to be by himself, and only fights when provoked, and he hates egoistical people, and he is stronger in his human form, and he is a SSS class monster, and he has anger issues? Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The bus smelled like diesel, mildew, and the distinct, copper tang of dried blood that someone had tried to scrub out of the upholstery and failed. It was a smell Izuku Midoriya was intimately familiar with. It was the smell of his life. He sat in the very back row, the vibration of the engine rattling through his bones, doing absolutely nothing to soothe the pounding headache that had been his constant companion for the last 3 years. He stared out the window, but there was nothing to see. Just the endless, oppressive darkness of the tunnel that connected the human world to the other side. Izuku shifted, the cheap fabric of the bus seat straining audibly under his weight. This wasn't the scrawny, trembling boy who had once dreamed of being a hero in a world of quirks. That boy had died a long time ago, eaten alive by his own genetics. The Izuku sitting on the bus was a slab of muscle and scar tissue. At 15 years old, he was already 6 feet tall and broad enough that he took up a seat and a half. He wore a dark green hoodie that was frayed at the cuffs, the hood pulled up to shadow his face, but it couldn't hide the defining features of his mutation. His jaw was square and heavy, his neck thick with corded muscle. His hands, resting on his denim-clad knees, were scarred, the knuckles rough and calloused, hinting at a history of violence that would make a career soldier wince. But it was the eyes that made people look away. They were green, but not the bright, hopeful emerald of his childhood. They were toxic, radioactive sludge green, framed by dark, heavy bags that spoke of chronic insomnia. And deep within those irises, if one looked closely enough, they would see the pupils weren't quite round. They trembled, occasionally slitting vertically like a reptile's before snapping back. Calm down, he told himself, the thought a growl in his own mind. It's just a bus ride. Nobody is challenging you. Nobody is looking at you. But the other was always there. The Hyde. It wasn't a quirk. It wasn't a gift. It was a curse, a recessive, ancient genetic trait from a lineage of monsters that were supposed to be extinct, or at least enslaved. Hydes were serval creatures by nature, beasts that required a master to unlock their potential, chemically induced slaves to the will of others. Izuku was different. He was a mutation within a mutation. An apex variant. He didn't need a master. He didn't need a chemical trigger. He was the trigger. And the Hyde wasn't a separate personality. It was him, magnified, stripped of inhibition, and fueled by a bottomless well of rage. Hey, look at the human! He's shaking like a leaf. The voice cut through the drone of the engine, sharp and mocking. Izuku's eye twitched. Don't do it, he thought. You just got expelled from the last 3 schools. This is the end of the line. Yokai Academy? If you get kicked out of here, the government puts you in a cage. He slowly turned his head. A few rows ahead, a human boy with brown hair, Tsukunono, if the orientation pamphlet Izuku had briefly glanced at was accurate regarding transfer names, was clutching his backpack like a lifeline. He was sweating profusely, surrounded by students who looked mostly human but felt off. The one taunting him was a guy with wild hair and teeth that looked a little too sharp. A werewolf, maybe? Or just a low-level ghoul. Please, Tsukun stammered, his voice cracking. I just want to get to school. You don't belong here, meatbag, the bully sneered, leaning over the seat. This bus goes to Yokai Academy. Monsters only. You smell like lunch. The bully's hand shot out, grabbing Tsukun by the collar. The human yelped, a pathetic, high-pitched sound. Izuku felt the heat rise in his chest. It wasn't a slow burn. It was an explosion. It started in his gut, a roiling ball of magma, and shot into his veins. His heart rate, usually a slow, predatory thrum, spiked. He hated bullies. He hated them with a visceral, biological intensity. But more than that, he hated ego. He hated the arrogance of the strong preying on the weak just because they could. It reminded him of his childhood, of being diagnosed quirkless before his true nature manifested, of being treated like glass. The bus hit a bump. Izuku stood up. He didn't make a grand announcement. He didn't shout, "Halt, villain!" He simply unfolded his massive frame from the back seat and walked down the aisle. The floorboards creaked under his heavy boots. The bully had raised a fist to strike the trembling human. Izuku's hand shot out, moving with a speed that blurred in the dim light. He caught the bully's wrist. The sound was sickening, a wet slap of flesh on flesh, followed by the immediate, grinding halt of momentum. The bully froze. He looked up, annoyed, expecting a teacher or a hall monitor. Instead, he looked up into the shadowed hood of a boy who smelled like ozone, rain, and raw, chemical violence. "Let go," Izuku said. His voice was a low rumble, like tectonic plates grinding together. It wasn't a request. The bully blinked, then sneered. "Who the hell are you? Get your hands off me, freak, or I'll..." Izuku squeezed. He didn't transform. He didn't need to. The muscles in his forearm shifted, dense as steel cables. Crack. The sound of the radius and ulna snapping was loud enough to be heard over the engine. The bully screamed, a high-pitched wail of shock and agony, his knees buckling. He dropped Sukun, clawing uselessly at Izuku's hand with his free arm. It was like clawing at a statue. Izuku leaned down, bringing his face close to the bully's. His eyes seemed to glow in the gloom. "You're loud," Izuku whispered, the sound vibrating in the bully's chest. "And you have an inflated opinion of your place on the food chain. Sit down and shut up, or the next thing I break is your jaw." He released the wrist. The bully collapsed into his seat, cradling his broken arm, whimpering. All bravado evaporated instantly. The entire bus had gone silent. Even the driver, a glowing-eyed entity that had seen everything, kept his eyes on the road, sensing the shift in atmospheric pressure. This wasn't normal teenage posturing. This was the presence of an apex predator. Izuku looked down at Sukun. The human boy was staring up at him with wide, terrified eyes shaking even harder than before. Thank you?" Sukun squeaked. Izuku stared at him coldly. "Don't thank me. I didn't do it for you. I did it because his voice was annoying me." He turned his back on the human and trudged back to his seat. He sat down, pulled his hood lower, and crossed his arms. The rage was still there, simmering just beneath the surface, a tiger pacing in a cage. The breakage of the bone hadn't satisfied it. It never did. It only made the Hyde want more. Just get through the day, Izuku thought, closing his eyes. Just one day without killing anyone. The bus emerged from the tunnel into a world that defied logic. The sky was a perpetual, bruised crimson, churning with unnatural clouds. An ocean of red liquid, blood, algae, churned against rocky cliffs, and there, looming like a tombstone against the sky, was Yokai Academy. It was a fortress of Gothic architecture, all spires, gargoyles, and imposing stone walls. It looked like a prison. To Izuku, it felt like home. As the students filed off the bus, keeping a wide berth around Izuku, he adjusted his backpack. It was heavy, filled not just with books, but with weighted plates. He wore them constantly, ankle weights, wrist weights, a vest. 200 pounds of extra gear, just to keep him grounded, to keep his movements sluggish, to keep him from accidentally tearing a door off its hinges. "Hey! Wait up!" Izuku didn't stop. He knew the voice. It was the human. Sukun jogged up beside him, panting. I really appreciate what you did back there. My name is Tsukunono." Izuku kept walking, his stride long and purposeful. "I told you to leave me alone. I don't know anyone here," Sukun admitted, his voice trembling. "And this place? It's scary, isn't it?" "It's a school for monsters," Izuku said flatly. "If you're scared, leave. If you can't leave, stop shaking. Prey shakes. Predators eat prey." Before Tsukun could respond, a blur of pink and white motion cut across their path. A girl on a bicycle came careening down the hill, shouting, "Look out! The brakes!" Izuku didn't flinch. He simply stopped walking. The bike slammed into the curb a few feet away. The rider was launched into the air. In a romantic comedy, the protagonist would catch her. They would tumble, Maybe kissed by accident. Izuku watched her fly. He calculated her trajectory, determined she wouldn't hit him, and stepped aside. The girl crashed into Tsukun, a tangle of limbs, a cloud of dust, and a groan of pain. Izuku looked down at the pile. The girl sat up, rubbing her head. She was strikingly beautiful. Pale skin, long pink hair, and eyes that held a strange, mesmerizing depth. Mocha Akashiya. A vampire. Even without the rosary around her neck, Izuku could smell the ancient, potent bloodline. She smelled like roses and iron. Ouch. She murmured, then looked at Tsukun. Oh my gosh! Are you okay? I'm so sorry. I am fine, Tsukun groaned, his face red. Mocha stood up, dusting off her skirt. Then she froze. Her nose twitched. She turned slowly, her eyes locking onto Izuku. Izuku tensed. He hated being stared at. You! Mocha stepped closer, ignoring Tsukun. She leaned in, invading Izuku's personal space. She took a deep sniff near his neck. Izuku growled, a low, warning rumble in his chest. Back off. You smell incredible, Mocha whispered, her eyes dilating. Not sweet like him. She pointed vaguely at Tsukun. You smell dangerous. Like a thunderstorm. Like chemicals and power. I smell like I haven't slept in 3 days and I'm out of patience, Izuku snapped. He stepped around her. Don't touch me. Wait. Mocha bounded after him, her vampire speed evident. She was cheerful, oblivious to the aura of death Izuku was projecting. I'm Mocha Akashiya. What's your name? You're not a werewolf, are you? You don't smell like wet dog. You don't smell like a demon either. Izuku stopped. He turned to face her. He loomed over her, his shadow engulfing her form. Most people shrank back when he did this. Mocha just looked up, curious. I am not your friend, Izuku said, enunciating every word. I am not your classmate. I am a disaster waiting to happen. If you have any survival instincts, vampire, you will stay away from me. Mocha blinked. Then she smiled. You're grumpy. I like that. It's mysterious. Izuku stared at her in disbelief. Was she stupid? Or just so arrogant in her status as an S-class monster that she couldn't conceive of a threat? I'm going to class, Izuku grunted, turning away. Me too. Let's walk together. Mocha chirped, latching onto his arm. Izuku stiffened. His skin felt hot where she touched him. Not in a romantic way, but in a reactive way. His body interpreted touch as an attack. His muscles rippled, hard as rock beneath his hoodie. Let go. Nope. Mocha beamed. I've decided. You and Tsukun are my first friends. Izuku looked at Tsukun, who was dusting himself off and looking at Mocha with hearts in his eyes. Great, Izuku thought, dragging Mocha along because she refused to detach and he didn't want to break her arm like he had the bullies. A vampire with no boundaries and a human with a death wish. This is going to be a long year. Class 1 to 3 was a zoo. Literally and figuratively. Izuku took the seat in the back corner, the farthest point from the door and the teacher's desk. He slumped into the chair, the wood groaning in protest. He kept his hood up. Ms. Nikanome, the homeroom teacher, was a catwoman. She was bubbly, annoying, and clearly trying too hard. She was explaining the rules of the academy, specifically the one about humans being killed on sight. Izuku glanced at Tsukun. The human looked like he was about to vomit. Izuku felt a flicker of contempt. If you're going to infiltrate a monster school, at least learn to mask your scent, he thought. He reeks of fear. Now why don't we do self-introductions? Ms. Nikanome chirped. Students stood up one by one. A cyclops. A will-o'-the-wisp. A witch. When it was Izuku's turn, he didn't stand up. He stayed slumped in his chair. You in the back. Ms. Nikanome called out. The one in the hoodie, Izuku sighed. The sound was like a steam valve opening. He stood up slowly. The chair scraped loudly against the floor. He towered over the rest of the class. Izuku Midoriya, he said. His voice carried without him raising it. And what species are you, Midoriya-kun? Ms. Nikanome asked, her tail twitching nervously. Does it matter? Izuku asked. Well, It helps us understand each other. I'm a Hyde, Izuku said. A ripple of whispers went through the class. A Hyde? Aren't those the ones that serve masters? Yeah, like pets. He doesn't look like a pet. Where's his master? Izuku's hands clenched into fists at his sides. The leather of his gloves creaked. I don't have a master, Izuku said, scanning the room. His gaze landed on a large, green-skinned student in the front row, Saizo Komiya. The orc. And I don't play well with others. So don't talk to me. Don't look at me. Just leave me alone. He sat down. The silence that followed was heavy. Oh, okay then. Ms. Nikanome laughed nervously. Next, throughout the lesson, Izuku felt eyes boring into him. Mocha was staring from across the room. Sukun was glancing back nervously. But the most hostile gaze came from the front. Saizo Komiya. The orc was leaning back in his chair, picking his teeth with a claw. He was big, maybe almost as big as Izuku, but his mass was soft, blubbery muscle compared to Izuku's dense, corded frame. Saizo smirked at Izuku. He mouthed one word, dog. Izuku looked away, staring out the window at the red sky. 1, 2, 3, 4. He counted prime numbers. It was a technique his therapist had taught him before she quit, terrified of him. Focus on the math. The math is constant. The rage is a variable, but the rage was rising. It was a physical heat in his stomach. The enhancement was reacting to the challenge. His body wanted to fight. His cells were screaming for violence. Lunch break. Izuku found a secluded spot behind the gymnasium. It was a small grove of dead, twisted trees. Perfect. Quiet. He sat on a stone bench and opened his bento. It wasn't a cute arrangement of rice and vegetables. It was 3 pounds of raw steak, slightly seared on the outside, and 6 hard-boiled eggs. His metabolism burned through calories like a furnace. He needed the protein to maintain his density. He took a bite of the steak, tearing it with teeth that were slightly sharper than a human's. I knew I'd find you here, Izuku choked, coughing. He swallowed the meat and glared up. Mocha was standing there, holding a bento box. Sukun was trailing behind her like a lost puppy. Can we eat with you? Mocha asked, already sitting down before he could answer. No, Izuku said. Too late. Mocha chirped. She opened her lunch. So, Midoriya-kun, you said you're a Hyde? I've read about them. They are usually, slaves, Izuku finished for her. He took another bite of meat. Servants. Bodyguards. Used by vampires, nightshades, and sirens to do their dirty work because hides are durable and expendable. That sounds terrible, Sukun said softly. It's biology, Izuku said. But I'm a variant. My genetics are wrong. I don't imprint. I don't serve. That makes you a Ronin, Mocha said excitedly. A masterless samurai. It makes me a liability, Izuku corrected. Hey! You! The voice boomed across the courtyard. Izuku closed his eyes. He stopped chewing. He knew that voice. Saizo Komiya emerged from around the corner of the gym, flanked by 2 lackeys, a lizard man and a goblin. The orc was grinning, tusks protruding from his lower lip. I was looking for the new kid, Saizo said, cracking his knuckles. The Hyde who thinks he's too good to introduce himself properly. Izuku slowly packed his bento box. He put the lid on. He wrapped it in the cloth. Leave us alone, Saizo, Mocha said, standing up. Her voice was firm. He isn't bothering you. Stay out of this, Akashiya, Saizo sneered. I'm talking to the dog. He stepped closer, his shadow falling over Izuku, who was still sitting. You know, Saizo mocked, Hydes are supposed to be obedient. Maybe you just need to be broken in. Maybe you need a master who knows how to handle a mutt. Izuku sighed. It was a long, weary sound. He placed his bento box gently on the bench next to him. Sukun, Izuku said quietly. Why yeah? Take Mocha and move back. About 50 feet. What? Mocha frowned. I can handle him. I'm a vampire. Move, Izuku said. The word came out as a growl. His eyes flashed. The pupils slit vertically. Mocha felt a chill run down her spine. It wasn't the fear of a predator. It was the instinctual warning of a natural disaster. She grabbed Sukun's arm and pulled him back. Izuku stood up. He turned to face Saizo. You have an ego problem, Izuku said. His voice was calm, but it had a metallic edge to it. You think because you're big you're strong. You think because you have teeth you're a wolf. I am strong! Saizo roared. He threw a punch. It was a clumsy, telegraphed haymaker. But it had the weight of an orc behind it. It could shatter concrete. Izuku didn't dodge. Wham! The fist connected squarely with Izuku's jaw. The force was immense. Izuku's head snapped to the side. A spray of blood hit the dry grass. Sukun screamed. Midoriya! Saizo grinned triumphantly. See? Just a mutt. Weak. Izuku slowly turned his head back to the center. There was a nasty bruise forming on his jaw. His lip was split. Then, as Saizo watched, the bruise turned yellow, then green, then vanished. The split lip knit itself back together in a hiss of steam. Izuku spat a glob of blood onto the ground. He looked at Saizo. He smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was a Hyde smile. Too wide. Too many teeth. Is that it? Izuku asked. Saizo blinked. What? That didn't even hurt, Izuku lied. It hurt like hell. But the pain was fuel. The adrenaline hit Izuku's system. Phase 1 enhancement. His muscles swelled against his hoodie. The fabric tore at the shoulders. He grew an inch taller. His veins turned black, visible under his pale skin like a roadmap of corruption. My turn, Izuku whispered. He moved. He was faster than an orc had any right to expect. Izuku didn't use martial arts. He used violence. He stepped inside Saizo's guard and drove his fist into the orc's gut. Boom! The impact sounded like a cannon shot. Saizo's eyes bulged. He doubled over, gasping for air that wasn't there. Izuku grabbed the back of Saizo's head with one hand and his belt with the other. With a roar that sounded more beast than boy, he lifted the 300-pound orc over his head. Put him down! The lizard man lackey shouted, rushing forward. Izuku threw Saizo. He didn't just drop him, he threw him. Saizo's body became a projectile. He slammed into the lizard man and the goblin, bowling them over like pins. They crashed into the brick wall of the gymnasium, leaving a spiderweb of cracks in the masonry. Dust settled. Saizo groaned, trying to push himself up. Why you? Izuku walked over. His steps were heavy, cracking the pavement tiles. He stopped in front of the fallen orc. Izuku crouched down. His eyes were wide, the scara turning bloodshot. The monster was close to the surface. You called me a dog, Izuku said softly. He reached out and grabbed one of Saizo's tusks. Saizo whimpered. Wait, dogs bite, Izuku said. He ripped the tusk. He didn't pull it out. That would be permanent maiming, and Izuku had just enough control left to avoid expulsion. Instead, he applied pressure, twisting Saizo's head until the orc's face was pressed into the dirt. Listen to me, Izuku hissed, leaning into Saizo's ear. I am not here to play your high school games. I am not here to be the alpha. But if you ever try to assert dominance over me again, if you ever touch me, I will tear your arms off and beat you to death with them. Do you understand? Why yes. Saizo squealed. Yes. I understand. Izuku released him. He stood up, shaking his hand as if he had touched something filthy. He took a deep breath. In. Out. 4. 7. 11. The black veins receded. The swelling in his muscles went down slightly. He was still pumped, still dangerous, but the immediate urge to kill was fading. He turned around. Mocha and Sukun were staring at him. Sukun looked terrified. Mocha looked intense. Her hands were clasped over her chest, her cheeks flushed. That was... Mocha breathed. Amazing. Izuku grabbed his bento box. He walked past them. Don't follow me, he said. I've lost my appetite. The rest of the day passed in a blur of whispers. The story of the fight spread like wildfire. The transfer student took down Saizo with one punch. He regenerated instantly. He's a monster. Good. Fear was a useful barrier. By the time the final bell rang, Izuku was exhausted. Not physically. Physically he could run a marathon, but mentally. Keeping the Hyde in check required constant, conscious effort. It was like holding a door shut against a hurricane. He walked out of the school building, heading for the dorms. The sun was setting, casting long, bloody shadows across the campus. Midoriya-kun! He didn't stop. Mocha appeared in front of him, blocking his path. Sukun was there too, looking hesitant but determined. Move, Akashiya, Izuku said. No, Mocha said. She held out a hand. I know you said you don't want friends. And I know you're scary. But you didn't hurt him as bad as you could have. Izuku raised an eyebrow. I threw him into a wall. But you didn't kill him, Mocha said. And you stepped in on the bus when that guy was hurting Sukun. You act like a beast, but you hate bullies, don't you? Izuku stared at her. She was perceptive. It was annoying. I hate arrogance, Izuku corrected. There's a difference. Well, I like you, Mocha decided. And Sukun likes you too. Right, Sukun? Why yeah. Sukun said, forcing a brave face. You're really strong, Midoriya? Maybe having someone strong around isn't so bad. Izuku looked at them. The vampire and the human. A tragedy waiting to happen. He adjusted his backpack straps. Do whatever you want, Izuku muttered, walking around them. Just don't expect me to save you when you get into trouble. We won't. Mocha called after him. See you tomorrow, Midoriya-kun. Izuku didn't wave back. He kept walking toward the dorms. As he reached the door to his assigned room, he paused. He looked at his hand. It was trembling slightly. Not from fear, but from the residual energy of the rage. He clenched his fist until the trembling stopped. He unlocked the door and stepped into the darkness of his room. He didn't turn on the lights. He dropped his bag, sat on the edge of the bed, and put his head in his hands. Day 1 complete, he thought. Nobody died, but in the silence of the room, he could feel the pulse of the school around him. He could smell the thousands of monsters, the magic, the violence, the hormones. This place was a powder keg, and Izuku Midoriya was the match. He pulled a sketchbook out of his bag, an old habit from his human life. He opened it to a fresh page. He didn't draw heroes anymore. He began to sketch the layout of the school, marking exits, choke points, and structural weaknesses. Survival, he told himself. Just survive. His eyes flashed green in the dark. And if they push you, the Hyde whispered in the back of his mind, break them. The morning sun at Yokai Academy didn't shine, it bled. It filtered through the crimson cloud layer, casting a sickly, rust-colored hue over the gothic spires of the school. To Izuku Midoriya, it looked like the inside of an eyelid. He sat in his homeroom seat, the wood groaning rhythmically as he tapped a heavy boot against the floor. He hadn't slept. Hydes didn't need much sleep, maybe 4 hours a cycle, but his insomnia was born of vigilance, not biology. The classroom was buzzing. But unlike the day before, the noise wasn't a chaotic clamor. It was a hushed, nervous murmur. And the center of that silence was him. Every time Izuku shifted, neck muscles rolling with a sound like grinding gravel, 3 rows of students flinched. The story of Saizo Komiya, the orc who had ruled the freshman class for exactly 4 hours before being thrown through a brick wall, had mutated overnight. I heard he ate Saizo's tusks. I heard he didn't even use magic. Just brute force. They say he's a biological experiment gone wrong. A Hyde without a master? That's just a wild animal. Izuku stared straight ahead, his hooded eyes fixed on the chalkboard. He ignored them. Fear was a useful insulator. It kept the pests away. Good morning, Midoriya-kun. The insulator, apparently, didn't work on vampires. Izuku didn't turn his head as Mocha Akashiya slid into the seat next to him. She didn't sit normally. She practically vibrated with energy, her long pink hair cascading over her shoulders. She leaned in, invading his personal space with a casual disregard for her own safety that baffled him. She inhaled deeply. You smell like rain today, she announced, her voice a melodic chime that grated on his nerves. Rain and rubbing alcohol? Did you get hurt? Go away, Akashiya, Izuku grumbled, his voice a low bass rumble. Nope, she chirped. She placed a juice box on his desk. I brought you tomato juice. It's full of iron. You look pale. I'm always pale, Izuku said, staring at the juice box. And I don't drink tomato juice. I eat meat. Well, Tsukun likes it, she said, gesturing behind her. Sukun Ono was standing by the door, looking like he was debating whether to enter the classroom or flee the country. He gave a shaky wave when Izuku's gaze landed on him. Midoriya, Hyde, Sukun squeaked. Izuku sighed, the sound heavy in his chest. Why are you two following me? The orc is in the infirmary. The hierarchy is established. You don't need protection. Mocha rested her chin on her hand, staring at him with those wide, unnerving eyes. I told you yesterday. I like you. You're interesting. Most monsters here are so uncomplicated. They're either bullies or victims. But you? You're a walking contradiction. She reached out, her finger hovering near the scar that ran from Izuku's ear down to his jawline. Don't, Izuku warned. His hand twitched. Mocha pulled back, but she wasn't scared. She was fascinated. You have so much anger inside you, Midoriya-kun. I can smell it. It's like a fire that never goes out. Doesn't it get tiring, being angry all the time? Izuku turned to her fully for the first time. His green eyes were dull, flat, and dangerous. Anger is fuel, he said quietly. It keeps the heart beating. It keeps the regeneration active. If I stop being angry, I might just stop moving altogether. Mocha blinked, her smile faltering for a fraction of a second. That's really sad. It's survival, Izuku corrected. Before the conversation could continue, Ms. Nikanome burst into the room, her tail swishing happily. All right, kittens. Everyone into your gym clothes. Today is physical assessment. The class groaned, but Izuku felt a spike of adrenaline. Physical assessment. That meant hitting things. That meant a release. He stood up, grabbing his gym bag. As he walked past Mocha, he leaned down, whispering so only she could hear, "Stay close to the human. He trips over his own shadow. If he dies, the paperwork will be annoying." Mocha beamed, taking it as a sign of affection. Okay. Izuku walked out, shaking his head. Why won't she listen? I am not a hero. The boys' locker room was a humid box of testosterone and musk. It smelled of wet fur, sweat, and cheap body spray. Izuku went to the farthest corner to change. He stripped off his hoodie, revealing the white t-shirt beneath. Then, he took that off. The chatter in the room died instantly. Izuku's back was a tapestry of violence. It wasn't just muscular. It was a geological formation of trapezius and latissimus dorsi, carved from granite. But marring the muscle were scars, burn marks, claw rakes, and along his spine, strange, circular puncture marks where tubes had once been inserted to pump experimental steroids into his system during his treatment as a child. He pulled on his gym shirt, a tight, white athletic tee that strained across his chest, and his track pants. He sat down on the bench to lace his boots. He didn't wear sneakers. He wore steel-toed combat boots. He needed the traction. Hey, a voice whispered nearby. Look at his arms. Look at the veins. Izuku's vascularity was unnatural. Thick, dark veins pulsed along his forearms, visible even when he was relaxed. It was a sign of the Hyde blood, the toxic sludge that replaced normal adrenaline in his system. He stood up, grabbing a towel. The students in his path parted like the Red Sea. Sukun was in the corner, struggling to put on his shorts without exposing his lack of a tail or wings. He looked at Izuku, his eyes wide with a mix of awe and terror. Ready? Izuku asked, pausing briefly. I think I'm going to fail, Sukun whispered. I can't lift a car or breathe fire. Then don't try to, Izuku said flatly. Just run fast. Cowardice is a valid survival strategy for prey animals. It wasn't a compliment, but Sukun nodded gratefully anyway. Right. Run fast. The gymnasium was massive, a cavernous hall with a reinforced floor designed to withstand impacts from creatures that weighed tons. The air was thick with dust and chalk. The gym teacher, Mr. Katsubo, was a squat, ugly man with tentacles peeking out from under his tracksuit cuffs. A kraken in human guise. He blew a whistle that sounded like a steam train. Listen up, maggots. Today isn't about dodgeball. This is Yokai Academy. We train you to be apex predators. Today, we spar. Cheers erupted from the more aggressive students. Werewolves, demons, and trolls. Pair up! Katsubo shouted. Try not to kill your partner. Maiming is acceptable. Fatalities require paperwork. Izuku stood near the wall, arms crossed. He had no intention of participating unless forced. Midoriya-kun, he closed his eyes. Of course. Mocha trotted over, looking strangely elegant in her gym uniform. Tsukun was trailing her, looking pale. Let's be partners, Mocha suggested. There are 3 of us, Izuku pointed out. We can rotate. She smiled. Oh. Tsukun can be the referee. I like that, Tsukun said quickly. I'm a great referee. Izuku looked at Mocha. You're a vampire. S-class. You'll break the human if you spar with him. And if you spar with me. He looked at her neck, at the rosary with the silver cross. You're sealed. You're weak. Mocha puffed out her cheeks. I am not weak. I'm athletic. You're suppressed, Izuku said. Fighting you like this would be like fighting a toddler. I don't get anything out of it. That's mean. Mocha huffed. Fine. Then I'll fight him. She pointed at a random lizard man who was flexing nearby. The lizard man looked at Mocha, grinned, and licked his lips. An S-class vampire? Even sealed, you're a prize. Let's dance, sweetheart. Izuku leaned back against the wall, watching. He wasn't worried. Even sealed, Mocha had supernatural reflexes. The sparring matches began. It was chaos. Fireballs flew across the gym. A minotaur was body slamming a goblin. Mocha was doing well, dodging the lizardman's clumsy strikes with grace, but she lacked stopping power. She landed a slap, a push, but nothing that could put the monster down. Then, disaster struck. The lizardman, frustrated by Mocha's evasiveness, lashed out with his tail. It wasn't aimed at Mocha. It was a wide sweep. Tsukun, standing too close as the referee, panicked. He scrambled backward, tripped over his own feet, and fell forward. Mocha-san, look out! He screamed, flailing his arms. His hand grasped for purchase. He caught the chain of the rosary around Mocha's neck. Gravity and momentum did the rest. Snap! The sound was small, metallic, and insignificant amidst the noise of the gym. But to Izuku, whose senses were dialed up to 11, it sounded like a gunshot. Time seemed to slow down. Izuku pushed himself off the wall. The rosary flew from Mocha's neck, arcing through the air. The silver cross spun, catching the light. Mocha froze. Her eyes, usually a soft, cheerful hazel, rolled back for a split second. Her body went rigid. A shockwave blasted outward from her position. Boom! The floor tiles beneath her feet shattered. Dust exploded into a ring, knocking Tsukun and the lizard man onto their backs. The wind generated by the force blew the other students' hair back. Silence descended on the gymnasium. The dust swirled, thick and obscuring. From within the cloud, a voice emerged. It wasn't Mocha's voice. It was deeper, colder, dripping with an arrogance so potent it felt physical. Who? The voice purred, woke me up. The dust cleared. Mocha stood there. But it wasn't the Mocha everyone knew. Her pink hair had turned silver, shimmering like liquid mercury. Her eyes were blood red, with slit pupils that glowed in the dim light. Her posture had changed completely. Gone was the bubbly, hunched stance. She stood tall, regal, radiating an aura of absolute superiority. Inner Mocha. The true vampire. She looked down at Tsukun, who was trembling on the floor. You, she said, her lip curling in distaste. You pulled the seal? A human? I'm sorry! Tsukun wailed. Inner Mocha turned her gaze to the lizard man, who was getting up, looking confused. And you, she said? You were trying to hit my other self? How pedestrian. Who the hell are you? The lizard man growled. You hair-dyed freak. He lunged at her. Inner Mocha didn't even blink. She raised one leg in a high kick, moving so fast she was a blur. Crack. Her heel connected with the lizardman's chin. He was launched, literally launched, into the ceiling. He stuck there for a second, embedded in the plaster, before crashing down to the floor, unconscious. Know your place, Inner Mocha stated. She dusted off her hands. Weaklings. The gym was silent. Even Mr. Katsubo looked nervous. S-class monsters were rare, and vampires were the royalty of the S-class. Inner Mocha scanned the room. Her gaze was dismissive, bored. She looked at the werewolves, the trolls, the demons. None of them met her eyes. They all sensed the gap in power. Then, her eyes landed on the wall. Izuku was still standing there. He hadn't flinched. He hadn't looked away. His arms were crossed over his massive chest, and his expression was one of mild annoyance. Inner Mocha paused. She tilted her head. "You," she said. She pointed a slender finger at him. Izuku didn't move. "Me. You're the one the other me won't shut up about," she said, walking toward him. Her hips swayed with a predatory rhythm. The masterless Hyde. The anomaly. She stopped 3 feet in front of him. She was tall for a girl, but Izuku towered over her by a good 6 inches. "You don't smell like fear," she observed. "That's annoying. And you smell like ego," Izuku retorted. His voice was rough, scraping against the silence. "Put the necklace back on." "I prefer the noisy one." "She's less of a headache," the class gasped. Nobody spoke to an S-class like that. Inner Mocha's eyes narrowed. The red glow intensified. "You have a big mouth for a servant class. Hydes are meant to bow. They are meant to serve superior beings." Izuku's eye twitched. There it was. The trigger. Superior beings. Flashbacks hit him. Doctors in white coats looking down at him. This subject is property. Heroes looking at villains with pity. We are the righteous. The heat in his gut flared. The magma bubbled. "I don't have a master," Izuku said, his voice dropping an octave. "And I don't bow. Especially not to someone who thinks genetic lottery makes them a god." Inner Mocha smiled. It was a cruel, beautiful smile. "Then I'll make you bow," she said. She vanished. To the normal students, she disappeared. To Izuku, she was a silver streak. She appeared instantly in his blind spot, her legs swinging around for a roundhouse kick aimed at his temple. It was the same kick that had launched the lizard man. It had enough force to decapitate a normal human. Wham! The impact echoed like a thunderclap. Izuku's head snapped to the side. His body slid a few inches to the right, his boots carving grooves into the floor. But he didn't fall. He didn't launch. Slowly, agonizingly slowly, Izuku turned his head back to face her. His skin where she had kicked him was red. Then it turned purple. Then, with a hiss of escaping steam, it turned back to pale skin. Inner Mocha's eyes widened slightly. "Regeneration? Is that it?" Izuku asked. He sounded bored. But beneath the boredom, the Hyde was waking up. His pupils began to dilate, fluctuating between round and vertical slits. "You're sturdy," Inner Mocha admitted, backing off and resetting her stance. "Like a punching bag. Let's see how much punishment you can take." She came at him again. This time, it was a flurry. Kicks, palm strikes, knee jabs. She was a master of martial arts, her movements fluid and precise. She hit him in the kidneys, the solar plexus, the throat. Izuku stood his ground. He took the hits. Thud. Smack. Crack. He grunted with each impact. Ribs fractured and knitted back together in seconds. Organs ruptured and healed. The pain was excruciating, a symphony of nerve-ending screaming. But pain made him stronger. With every hit, Izuku's muscles swelled. The white t-shirt began to tear at the seams. His breathing became heavier, sounding like a bellows. Green sparks of bioelectricity began to dance along his knuckles. "Why won't you fall?" Inner Mocha shouted, frustration seeping into her voice. She delivered a devastating axe kick to his shoulder. Izuku's knees buckled slightly, the floor cracking beneath him under the added pressure. "Because..." Izuku growled through gritted teeth. He moved. He didn't use technique. He didn't use martial arts. He used raw, unadulterated speed born of explosive muscle power. His hand shot up. Inner Mocha tried to pull back, but she was a fraction of a second too slow. Izuku's hand, massive, calloused, and crackling with green energy, closed around her ankle. The momentum stopped instantly. Inner Mocha gasped, suspended in the air by one leg. She looked down. Izuku looked up. His face had changed. His jaw was distended, his teeth sharper. The veins on his neck were black ropes. His eyes were fully green, glowing like radioactive waste. "Because I'm angry," Izuku roared. He whipped his arm down. He slammed inner Mocha into the gym floor. Crash! The impact cratered the concrete. Debris flew everywhere. Students screamed and scrambled for cover. Izuku didn't let go. He spun, dragging her through the debris, and threw her across the gym. She flew like a rag doll, crashing into a stack of vaulting boxes, sending wood splinters flying. The gym was dead silent. Dust motes danced in the shafts of red light. He threw her, someone whispered. He threw an S-class vampire. From the pile of broken wood movement, inner Mocha stood up. She was dusty, her uniform torn at the shoulder, a trickle of blood running down her forehead. She wasn't knocked out. But she looked shocked. She touched the blood on her forehead, staring at her fingers. Blood? She whispered. My own blood? She looked at Izuku. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a cold, calculating fury. You are not a normal Hyde, she stated. Izuku stood in the center of the crater. He was panting, steam rising from his body in waves. His shirt was in tatters, hanging off his frame, revealing the slab of muscle and scar tissue underneath. I told you, Izuku rasped, his voice sounding like two stones grinding together. I'm a variant. You're a monster, she said, stepping forward. Her aura flared, silver energy swirling around her. A beast that needs to be put down. Try it, Izuku challenged. He spread his arms. Come and try it, princess. But next time I grab you, I won't let go. The air between them crackled. The pressure was immense. The weaker students, Sukun included, were on their knees, unable to breathe under the weight of the killing intent radiating from both combatants. Inner Mocha prepped for a dash. Izuku dug his heels in, preparing to intercept. Stop! A massive tentacle slammed down between them. Mr. Katsubo, now fully transformed into his kraken form, or at least, his upper half, blocked their path. He was sweating profusely. That's enough! The teacher yelled, though his voice wavered slightly. The assessment is over. Akashiya, cool off. Midoriya, stand down. You'll destroy the gymnasium. Inner Mocha stopped. She glared at the tentacle, then at Izuku. She straightened her posture, wiping the blood from her forehead. She smoothed her skirt. Fine, she said coldly. He's boring anyway. Just a brute. But her eyes lingered on him. There was no longer dismissal in her gaze. There was respect. A wary, grudging respect. She had found something she couldn't break. She turned and walked toward Sukun, who was holding the rosary like it was a holy relic, which, ironically, it was. Put it back on, she commanded, kneeling down so the human could reach her. Why yes, Mocha-san. Sukun stammered. He fumbled with the clasp. Izuku watched, his chest heaving. The rage was still pounding in his ears. The Hyde wanted to finish it. The Hyde wanted to tear the silver-haired girl apart to prove that he was the apex. Control, Izuku thought. Prime numbers. 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. He forced his muscles to relax. The black veins faded slowly. The green lightning dissipated. As the rosary clicked into place, Inner Mocha looked at Izuku one last time. You hate arrogance, she said softly, her voice carrying across the silence. But you have the greatest arrogance of all, Midoriya. You think you can live in this world alone. Then, her eyes rolled back. She slumped forward. A second later, Mocha Akashiya, the pink-haired, bubbly version, jerked awake. Huh! She looked around, blinking. She saw the crater in the floor. She saw the destroyed vaulting boxes. She saw Izuku, shirtless and steaming, looking like he had just wrestled a tank. Oh my gosh! Mocha squealed. Midoriya-kun! Your clothes! What happened? Did we spar? Did I win? Izuku stared at her. The transition was so jarring it gave him whiplash. He walked over to his gym bag, grabbed his spare hoodie, and pulled it on over his bare, sweat-slicked skin. He didn't answer her. He picked up his bag and walked toward the exit. Class is dismissed. Katsubo shouted behind him. As Izuku walked through the double doors, he heard footsteps running after him. Midoriya-kun! Wait! He didn't stop. He walked out into the hallway, the cool air hitting his face. Mocha caught up to him, grabbing his sleeve. She looked worried. Sukun told me the rosary came off, she said, her voice small. The other me, she was mean, wasn't she? Izuku looked down at her. He saw the genuine concern in her eyes. It was annoying. He hated how easily she could switch from a god-complex warrior to a concerned girl. She talks too much, Izuku grunted. Just like you. Mocha looked at the bruise on his jaw, the one place that hadn't fully faded yet because the bone was still knitting deep down. She reached up and touched it. I'm sorry, she whispered. She hurt you. Izuku pulled away from her touch. She didn't hurt me, Izuku lied. She just woke me up. He looked her in the eye. Keep that necklace on, Akashiya. Your other half, she thinks she's a queen. And I don't like royalty. I can't control it, Mocha admitted. Only Tsukun seems to be able to take it off, but I don't remember what happens when she's out. Is she really that bad? She's strong, Izuku admitted. It was the highest compliment he could give. But she fights with pride. Pride gets you killed. Rage keeps you alive. I think friends keep you alive, Mocha countered softly. Izuku snorted. Friends are just liabilities you haven't lost yet. He turned and walked away, heading down the dark corridor. Mocha watched him go. She touched the rosary at her throat. He's wrong, isn't he, inner Mocha? She whispered to herself. Deep inside her mind, in the cold, dark void where her other self resided, inner Mocha sat on a throne of shadows. She touched her own forehead, where the phantom pain of the impact still lingered. He is insolent, inner Mocha thought, a smirk playing on her lips. He is a wild dog. A brute. But, he caught my kick. No one has ever caught my kick. She closed her eyes. Interesting. The masterless beast is interesting. Later that evening, Izuku sat on the roof of the dormitory. The wind was howling, carrying the scent of salt from the Red Sea. He was sore. His entire body felt like a bruise. Inner Mocha's kicks had done internal damage that was taking hours to fully repair. His regeneration was infinite, but it wasn't instant when the damage was severe. He opened a can of tuna, protein, and ate it with a plastic fork. He looked at his hand. He flexed it. He had felt it today. The slip. When he had grabbed her ankle, he had almost lost control. He had almost let the Hyde take the wheel completely. If he had, he wouldn't have just thrown her. He would have ripped her leg off. He shivered, pulling his hoodie tighter. The enhancement was getting stronger. The more he fought, the more his body adapted. The more angry he got, the harder it was to come back. I need to be careful, he thought. If I kill a student, I'm done. They'll send the exterminators. He heard a rustle behind him. He didn't turn. I can smell you, Kurono. Kurono, the succubus, stepped out from behind the ventilation unit. She had been watching him for 10 minutes. You have a good nose, she purred, walking toward him. She was voluptuous, with short blue hair and a uniform that defied physics. You're the one who was staring at me in the cafeteria, Izuku said, not looking at her. The succubus. That's right, she said, swaying her hips. I saw what you did in the gym. Throwing Mocha Akashiya around? That was impressive. It was necessary, Izuku said. You're strong, Kuruma said, circling him. Maybe the strongest guy in the freshman class. I like strong guys. I don't care what you like, Izuku said, taking another bite of tuna. Kuruma giggled. She leaned down, whispering in his ear, You will. Everyone loves Kurumu eventually. It's just destiny. She blew a puff of pink smoke into his face, a charm spell. Izuku didn't cough. He didn't blink. He just inhaled the smoke and exhaled it. That smells like cheap perfume, he said flatly. Go away. Kuruma froze. Her eyes widened. It didn't work? My brain chemistry is a mess of cortisol and adrenaline, Izuku said, standing up and crushing the tuna can in one hand. Your mind games don't work on a mind that's already screaming. He walked past her to the door. Don't try to charm me again, he warned, pausing with his hand on the knob. I don't like being manipulated. Next time, I won't just ignore you. He slammed the door shut. Kuruma stood there, stunned. Her charm had never failed. Not once. He rejected me? She whispered. Her shock slowly turned into a pout, and then into a glare. Oh, you are playing hard to get, Midoriya. But nobody says no to Kuruma. Nobody, but deep down, she felt a shiver of fear. And beneath the fear, excitement. The masterless beast had just declared war on the school's social order. And everyone, the vampire, the human, the succubus, was being pulled into his gravity. Izuku just wanted to be left alone. But at Yokai Academy, the strongest never got to be alone. They just got more challengers. The cafeteria of Yokai Academy was less a place for dining and more a biological pressure cooker. It smelled of raw meat, sulfur, deep-fried mystery compounds, and the thick, suffocating musk of teenage hormones. For Izuku Midoriya, it was hell on earth. He sat at a table in the far back corner, the dead zone where the lighting fixtures flickered and buzzed like dying insects. He was alone, occupying a bench meant for 4 people. His lunch, a mountain of raw hamburger patties he had bribed the kitchen staff to give him, uncooked, sat before him. He wasn't eating. He was staring at the chaotic sea of students, his green eyes dilated and unblinking. Too loud, the Hyde whispered in the back of his mind. Too many scents. The wolf smells like wet dog. The slime smells like ammonia. The vampire smells like flowers. Midoriya-kun! Izuku closed his eyes slowly. He didn't need to look to know who it was. The floral scent had just intensified. Mocha Akashiya slid onto the bench opposite him. She was beaming, her pink hair bouncing. Tsukunono, the human disaster, shuffled in next to her, looking like he was expecting an execution. I brought you something, Mocha chirped. She placed a small, wrapped package on the table next to his raw meat. Cookies. I made them myself. Izuku stared at the package. I don't eat sweets, Akashiya. Sugar crashes my metabolism. I need protein and lipids. But they have chocolate chips, she insisted. Try one. Just one. If you don't like it, Sukun will eat them. I will? Sukun asked, looking alarmed. Izuku sighed, the sound like a tire deflating. He reached out with a scarred, massive hand and picked up a cookie. It looked comically small in his grip. He crushed it into his mouth, chewed once, and swallowed. Dry, he stated. I'll do better next time. Mocha promised, undeterred. There won't be a next time, Izuku muttered, returning to his hamburger patties. Suddenly, the ambient noise of the cafeteria shifted. The chaotic chatter didn't stop, but it changed tone. It went from general noise to a specific, hushed wave of murmurs, followed by a collective, audible gasp from the male population. Izuku's nose twitched. A new scent hit him. It was sweet, sickeningly so. Like overripe peaches and heavy perfume, layered over something predatory. It smelled like a trap. Who is that? Sukun whispered, staring toward the entrance. Walking through the cafeteria doors was a girl who seemed to have her own lighting crew. She had short, bobbed blue hair and eyes the color of amethysts. Her uniform was customized, the skirt shorter, the blazer tighter, accentuating curves that defied the laws of physics and teenage biology. She walked with a sway that was hypnotic. Every boy she passed stopped eating. Drool was visible. Kurumukurono. A succubus. She's, wow, Sukun stammered, his face turning red. Mocha puffed out her cheeks. She's not that special. Izuku didn't look up from his food. She smells like chemicals, he grunted. Pheromones. Airborne dopamine triggers. It's biological warfare. You're no fun, Mocha said. Kuruma scanned the room. Her eyes were hunting. She wasn't looking for food, she was looking for status. She had transferred to Yokai Academy with a single goal: to find the strongest mate, enslave him, and rule the school. Her gaze swept over the orcs, the werewolves, the trolls. Trash. Weaklings. Fodder. Then, her eyes landed on the back corner. She saw him. The green hoodie. The sheer size of him. The aura of black static that seemed to distort the air around his shoulders. She had heard the rumors. The masterless Hyde. The one who threw an S-class vampire through a wall. The one who broke Saizo Komiya like a twig. Kuruma licked her lips. Jackpot. She began to walk toward him. The sea of students parted. She trailed her fingers along the tables, leaving a wake of love-struck zombies. Hello there, a voice cooed. Izuku paused mid-bite. He slowly lowered his fork. Kuruma was standing at the edge of his table. She leaned forward, placing her hands on the surface, ensuring her cleavage was the primary focal point of his field of vision. I don't think we've met, she purred. I'm Kuruma. And you must be the green beast everyone is whispering about. Sukun looked like he was about to faint. Mocha narrowed her eyes, her vampire instincts sensing a rival. Izuku looked at Kuruma. His expression was bored. You're blocking my light, he said. Kuruma blinked. Her smile faltered for a microsecond before returning, brighter than before. Oh, you're the strong, silent type. I love that, she giggled. She moved around the table, squeezing herself onto the bench next to Izuku. He shifted away. Not out of shyness, but out of revulsion. Her scent was overpowering at this range. It made his nose itch. Get away from me, Izuku said, his voice dropping to a warning growl. Don't be like that, Kuruma whispered, leaning her head on his shoulder. I just want to be friends. You look so lonely back here. A big, strong man like you shouldn't be eating alone. You need a companion. She blew a puff of pink breath onto his neck. It was a subtle charm spell. The whisper of lust. It was supposed to cloud his mind, make him suggestible, make him want to protect her. Izuku swatted the air near his neck as if shooing a fly. Stop breathing on me, he snapped. You have halitosis. Kuruma froze. The entire cafeteria, which had been watching this interaction with bated breath, went silent. Halitosis? She squeaked. Bad breath, Izuku clarified. Brush your teeth. Mocha snorted into her hand. Sukun covered his mouth to hide a gasp of horror. Kuruma's face turned a shade of red that matched the sky outside. Her amethyst eyes flashed with genuine anger. I do not have bad breath, she hissed. That was never mind. Look, Midoriya-kun, I'm trying to be nice to you. Why don't we go somewhere more private? I can show you a really good time. She placed a hand on his bicep. She squeezed. It was like squeezing a tree trunk wrapped in denim. Izuku stood up. He moved so abruptly that Kuruma nearly fell off the bench. He grabbed his tray of raw meat. I'm leaving, he announced to the table. The air quality in here just dropped. He walked away, his heavy boots thudding against the linoleum. Kuruma sat there, stunned. Rejected. Publicly. She clenched her fists, her nails digging into the wood of the table. Nobody rejects Kuruma, she thought, her inner monologue turning venomous. I am a succubus. Men are supposed to fall at my feet. He thinks he's better than me? He thinks he's too good for me? She watched his retreating back, broad, powerful, and utterly dismissive. Fine. If he won't fall in love the easy way, I'll make him my slave the hard way. The afternoon classes were a blur of violence and history. Izuku spent most of history of dark arts staring out the window, counting the cracks in the courtyard pavement. 432. 433. 437. When the final bell rang, he was the first one out the door. He wanted to go to the gym, lift something heavy until his muscles screamed, and then pass out for 3 hours. Midoriya! He didn't stop. He kept walking down the empty corridor of the West Wing. I'm talking to you. A hand grabbed his shoulder. Izuku stopped. He looked at the hand. The nails were painted pink. He turned slowly. Kuruma was standing there. But she wasn't alone. Behind her were 4 male students, a minotaur, 2 werewolves, and a lizard man. Their eyes were glazed over, swirling with pink hearts. They were drooling slightly. Enslaved? Izuku asked, looking at the boys. Pathetic. They're not pathetic, Kuruma said, her voice dripping with malice. They're loyal. Unlike you? She stepped back, snapping her fingers. Get him, boys. Hold him down. I want to look him in the eye when I break his mind. The enslaved students roared and charged. Izuku didn't assume a fighting stance. He just sighed. I really hate this school, he muttered. The Minotaur reached him first, lowering his horns for a charge. Izuku sidestepped. He didn't dodge far, just enough. As the Minotaur passed, Izuku raised his elbow and drove it down into the creature's neck. Thud. The Minotaur hit the floor face first and didn't move. The 2 werewolves jumped at him in unison, claws extended. Izuku caught them. One hand on each throat. He held them apart, their claws scrabbling uselessly against his hoodie. His grip tightened. Sit, he commanded. He slammed their heads together. Crack. They dropped like sacks of potatoes. The lizard man hesitated. He looked at his fallen comrades, then at the green-eyed monster standing over them. The pink hearts in his eyes flickered, the fear overriding the charm for a split second. "Bee-boo!" Izuku said softly. The lizard man shrieked and ran away, scrambling down the hall on all fours. Izuku dusted off his hands. He looked at Kuruma. She was trembling. Not with fear yet. With disbelief. "My slaves," she whispered. You took them out in 10 seconds. They were weak," Izuku said, walking toward her. "Mind control doesn't make them stronger. It just makes them stupid. You took away their survival instincts." He stopped 2 feet from her. He loomed over her, his shadow swallowing her whole. "Is that it?" he asked. "Are we done?" Kuruma grit her teeth. "No. We are not done. I am Kuruma Kurono. I am going to be the queen of this school." She looked up at him, her eyes glowing with intense magical power. She spread her black, bat-like wings from her back, ripping through her blazer. "Look at me!" she screamed. She unleashed her charm beam. It wasn't a subtle pheromone this time. It was a concentrated blast of psychic energy, a pink laser of pure domination magic. It hit Izuku square in the face. Boom! The impact kicked up dust. Kuruma panted, smiling triumphantly. "Got you. Nobody can resist the charm beam at point-blank range. Now, fall to your knees and..." The dust cleared. Izuku was still standing. He hadn't moved. He hadn't blinked. The pink energy was sizzling against his skin, like water hitting a hot skillet. But it wasn't entering him. It was being burned away. Around Izuku's head, the air was distorting. Green sparks of bioelectricity were arcing from his temples. His eyes were wide, the pupils slit vertically. "What?" Kuruma whispered. Why aren't you charmed?" Izuku took a step forward. "You're trying to whisper orders into a hurricane," he said. His voice was distorted, sounding like 2 voices speaking at once, human and beast. He tapped his own temple. "In here," he said, "it is always screaming. There is rage. There is instinct. There is a noise so loud it drowns out everything else. Your magic is quiet, Kurono. It's too quiet." He took another step. Kuruma backed up until her back hit the lockers. "Stay back!" she shrieked, firing another beam. Izuku swatted the beam away with his hand. He physically swatted the magic away. He slammed his hand against the locker next to her head, denting the metal. Kuruma yelped, sliding down to the floor, covering her head. "Don't kill me! Please don't kill me!" She waited for the blow. She waited for the pain. It didn't come. She opened one eye. Izuku was looking down at her. His expression wasn't one of murder. It was one of profound disappointment. "You are weak," he said. The words cut deeper than any physical blow. "You rely on others to fight for you," Izuku continued, his voice cold and flat. "You manipulate people because you can't stand on your own 2 feet. You want to be a queen? A queen leads. You're just a parasite." He pulled his hand back from the locker. "I don't fight weaklings. It's a waste of calories." He turned around and walked away. Kuruma sat on the cold floor, tears welling up in her eyes. She had never been spoken to like that. She had been adored, feared, desired. But never pitied. Never dismissed as nothing. "I hate him," she sobbed, burying her face in her knees. "I hate him so much." 2 days passed. Kuruma didn't come to class. Rumors swirled that she was sick, or that she had transferred. Izuku didn't care. The silence was nice. He sat on a bench in the courtyard during lunch, eating a roasted turkey leg, bone and all. Mocha was next to him, reading a book. Sukun was practicing math problems. It was a rare moment of peace. "I wonder where Kuruma-san is," Sukun mused. "She hasn't been around since you rejected her. Maybe she realized she doesn't belong here," Izuku said, crunching through the turkey femur. "That's harsh, Midoriya-kun," Mocha chided gently. "She's just enthusiastic." "She's a manipulator," Izuku corrected. Suddenly, a commotion broke out near the edge of the forest that bordered the school grounds. "Hey! Look at the succubus! Not so high and mighty now, are you? You charmed my boyfriend last week, you witch!" Izuku stopped chewing, hearing enhancement active. He focused his ears. Amidst the jeering, he heard a familiar voice. Let go of me! Get off! It was Kurumu. She sounded terrified. Leave it, the Hyde whispered in his mind. Not your problem. She's a pest. Let nature take its course. But Izuku didn't move. He listened. You think you're special because you have a nice rack? A rough voice growled. You're just a D-class monster without your slaves. And now that everyone knows the transfer student broke your charm, nobody is scared of you. Please. Kuruma sobbed. Izuku's hand tightened around the turkey bone until it turned to dust. It wasn't that he cared about Kurumu. He didn't. She was annoying, but he hated bullies. He hated the pack mentality. He hated seeing a group of arrogant weaklings cornering someone who couldn't fight back. It reminded him of middle school. Of being quirkless. Of Bakugo and his lackeys cornering him in the alley. Midoriya-kun? Mocha asked, sensing the shift in his aura. The air around him had dropped 10 degrees. Izuku stood up. I'll be back, he said. In the clearing behind the equipment shed, Kurumu was on the ground. Her uniform was torn and muddy. Her wings were bruised. Standing over her were 3 upperclassmen. One was a troll, huge, warty, and smelling of swamp water. One was a harpy, screeching and sharp-taloned. One was a spider demon, multi-limbed and clicking his mandibles. They were the rejects of the upper years. Bullies who preyed on freshmen. Cry for us, the spider demon hissed, grabbing Kurumu's hair. Maybe if you beg, we'll only break 1 wing. I'm sorry! Kurumu cried. I won't use my charm anymore. Just let me go. Too late, the troll laughed, raising a massive, wooden club. We're going to teach you a lesson about the pecking order. Kurumu squeezed her eyes shut. She had no mana left. Her charm was broken. She was alone. Is this how it ends? She thought. Beaten up behind a shed? Midoriya was right. I am weak. I am just a parasite. The troll swung the club. Wham! The sound was loud. Sickeningly loud. Wood splintering against something hard. But Kurumu didn't feel any pain. She slowly opened her eyes. Standing over her, straddling her prone form, was a figure in a green hoodie. Izuku Midoriya had caught the club. He hadn't caught it with his hand. He had taken the hit on his forearm. The club had shattered into splinters against his limb. You! The troll gasped, stepping back. The freshman? Izuku didn't look at Kurumu. He looked at the troll. His hood was down. His eyes were glowing so bright they left tracers in the air. 3 against 1, Izuku said softly. Upperclassman cornering a freshman girl. Is this what passes for power in your year? Stay out of this, freak! The harpy shrieked, diving from the air. Her talons were aimed at Izuku's eyes. Izuku didn't even look up. He snatched the harpy out of the air by her ankle. You're buzzing, he growled. He slammed the harpy into the ground. Crunch! The ground shook. The harpy lay there, groaning, embedded in the dirt. The spider demon hissed, shooting a stream of acidic web at Izuku. Izuku raised his arm to shield his face. The acid hit his forearm, the same one that had blocked the club. Smoke rose. The fabric of his hoodie dissolved. The skin beneath bubbled and melted, revealing red muscle and white bone. Kurumu screamed. Midoriya! Your arm! The spider demon laughed. That's Class A acid. It'll melt right through your... The laughter died in his throat. Izuku lowered his arm. He looked at the melting flesh. He didn't scream. He didn't wince. He looked, annoyed. Itchy, Izuku muttered. As they watched, the melted flesh began to bubble. Steam erupted from the wound. Green sparks flew. Within 3 seconds, the muscle reknit. The skin grew back over it. The scar remained. Izuku always scarred, but the arm was functional. He healed? The troll stammered. Instantly? Izuku cracked his neck. My turn. He disappeared. To the troll, it looked like teleportation. To Izuku, it was just explosive acceleration. He appeared in front of the troll. He buried his fist in the troll's gut. The troll folded like a lawn chair. Izuku grabbed the troll by the neck and threw him. The massive creature flew 20 feet, crashing into the spider demon. They tangled into a ball of limbs and mandibles, rolling into the side of the shed. Izuku walked toward them. Each step was heavy, deliberate. "Get up," he commanded. The spider demon scrambled backward, terrified. "Stay away. You're a monster. You're SSS class. We didn't know. You didn't know she was under my protection?" Izuku lied. He didn't care about her, but claiming her territory made this justified in his mind. "We're sorry!" They screamed, scrambling to their feet and running away, limping and bleeding. Izuku watched them go. He snorted, a plume of steam escaping his nostrils. "Cowards!" He turned around. Kuruma was staring up at him. She was covered in dirt. Her eyes were wide, reflecting his silhouette. Izuku looked down at her. The rage faded, replaced by his usual apathy. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a handkerchief. It was plain, slightly crumpled. He dropped it on her face. "Wipe your nose," he said. Snot is undignified. Kuruma pulled the handkerchief off her face. She clutched it to her chest. You saved me," she whispered. "Why?" "I tried to enslave you. I insulted you." Izuku shrugged, shoving his hands into his pockets. "They were annoying me," he said. "And you?" He looked at her. "You were crying. Crying attracts predators. If you're going to survive here, stop manipulating people and start hitting the gym. Build your own strength." He turned to leave. "Wait!" Kuruma scrambled to her feet. She ignored the pain in her wings. She ran after him and threw her arms around his waist from behind, burying her face in his broad back. Izuku stiffened. "Get off." "No!" Kuruma shouted. "I get it now. I understand." "Understand what?" "Why my charm didn't work. Why you're so strong." She squeezed him tighter. "You're the apex. You're the king. And a queen needs a king," Izuku groaned. "I am not a king. I am a student trying to graduate." Kuruma ran around to face him. Her eyes weren't glowing with magic anymore. They were glowing with something far more dangerous, genuine infatuation. "I, Kuruma Kurono, pledge myself to you," she declared, striking a pose. "You are my fated mate. My destined one. I will be the best wife ever. I'll cook. I'll clean. I'll bear your strong, angry babies." Izuku paled. For the first time, the Hyde felt fear. "Babies?" he choked out. "Lots of them." Kuruma beamed. "We'll restart the Hyde species. We'll make a clan." "I'm leaving," Izuku said, walking faster. "Wait for me, darling." Kuruma cheered, linking her arm with his. "Let go," Izuku growled. "Never." From the distance, Mocha watched, her eyes narrowing. The rosary at her neck hummed slightly. "Midoriya-kun," Mocha muttered, crushing her juice box. "You attract the strangest people." Later that night, Izuku lay on his bed in the dorms. It was quiet. He stared at the ceiling. He had expected hatred. He had expected isolation. That was what he was used to. That was safe. But now, he had a vampire who thought he was interesting. He had a human who looked up to him. And now he had a succubus who wanted to breed with him. "They are clutter," the Hyde whispered. "Distractions. Weaknesses. They are annoying," Izuku agreed, but as he closed his eyes, he remembered Kuruma clinging to his back. She hadn't been using pheromones then. She had smelled like dirt, fear, and gratitude. It was a new scent. He rolled over, punching his pillow to make it firmer. "I need to transfer schools," he mumbled into the darkness. But he knew he wouldn't. The monsters here were strong. And deep down, in the part of his DNA that craved conflict, he was starting to have fun. The ecosystem of Yokai Academy was fragile. It was built on a delicate balance of terror, hierarchy, and the unspoken rule that the strong ate the weak. But lately, the ecosystem had a new apex predator, and he didn't follow the rules. He didn't eat the weak. He just wanted them to shut up. Izuku Midoriya walked down the main hallway of the academy, his shoulders hunched under the weight of his backpack, and the 200 pounds of lead weights sewn into the lining. His hood was up. His hands were shoved deep into his pockets. He was trying to be invisible. He was failing. "Darling! Wait for me," Izuku winced. The sound of Kuruma Kurono's voice was like a dentist's drill hitting a nerve. The succubus came sprinting down the hall, her customized uniform leaving little to the imagination. She wasn't using her charm magic anymore, at least, not on him. She didn't need to. She had replaced magical compulsion with terrifying, high-octane devotion. She latched onto his left arm, hugging his bicep like a koala. "I made you a bento!" she announced, loud enough for the entire corridor to hear. "It's all meat. I killed the cow myself." "Get off," Izuku grunted, not breaking stride. He dragged her along. Her weight was negligible to him. "Midoriya-kun!" From the other side of the hall came Mocha Akashiya. The vampire looked less than pleased at the succubus's positioning. She hurried over and latched onto his right arm. "Kurama-san, you are impeding his circulation," Mocha chided, pulling on Izuku's arm. "And he prefers my company. We have a connection." "Right, Midoriya-kun? I have a connection with silence," Izuku muttered. "Neither of you are providing it." Trailing behind them, looking like a nervous wreck, was Tsukunono. The human was carrying 3 bags, his own, Mocha's, and Kuruma's, which she had thrown at him so she could grapple Izuku. "Gee guys, maybe we should give him some space?" Tsukun suggested weakly. "Shut up, Tsukun!" Both girls yelled in unison. Izuku stopped. He stopped so abruptly that Kuruma swung forward like a pendulum. "I am going to the library," Izuku stated, his voice a low rumble that vibrated in their chests. "The library has a rule about noise. If you follow me, I will put you on top of a bookshelf." "A quiet date in the library?" Kuruma's eyes sparkled. "So romantic." "I give up," Izuku sighed. Suddenly, a metallic clang echoed from above. "Look out!" Izuku's reflexes, honed by years of living in a world that wanted him dead, kicked in. He didn't look up. He simply disengaged his arms from the girls, shaking them off like water, and stepped 1 foot forward, grabbing Tsukun by the collar and yanking the human back. Clang! A massive bronze washbasin fell from the ceiling. It slammed into the floor exactly where Tsukun had been standing a second ago. The impact cracked the tile. If it had hit the human, it would have cracked his skull. Silence fell over the hallway. Izuku looked at the washbasin. Then he looked up. Floating near the ceiling, sitting on a broomstick, was a small girl. She looked about 11 years old, dressed in a witch's outfit with a heart-shaped wand. She was giggling. "Missed," she chirped. I wanted to see the human go squish." Izuku's eyes narrowed. The pupils slid vertically for a fraction of a second. He hated pranks. Pranks were just bullying disguised as humor. "Yukari Sendo," Mocha gasped, looking up. "That's dangerous." "Shut it, vampire!" the girl shouted back. "You big-boobed monsters think you own the school. But brains beat brawn every time." She looked down at Izuku. Her eyes analyzed him with a scarily sharp intelligence. "And you," she pointed her wand at him. "The green beast. You don't look so tough. Just a big, dumb pile of muscle." Izuku stared at her. He calculated the distance to the ceiling. 20 feet. He could jump that. He could grab the broom, snap it, and drop her. "Do it," the Hyde whispered. "Snap the twig." "No," Izuku thought. "She's a child. I don't hurt children." "Clean this up," Izuku said, pointing to the washbasin. Yukari stuck her tongue out. "Make me meathead." She waved her wand. Wind blade. A gust of razor-sharp wind slashed down from the ceiling. It wasn't lethal, but it was designed to shred clothes and cut skin. Mocha and Kuroma shrieked, covering their faces. Tsukun cowered. Izuku didn't move. He didn't block. The wind blade hit him. Shrip. His hoodie, his third one this week, sliced open across the chest. A shallow cut appeared on his pectoral muscle. A thin line of blood welled up. Yukari laughed. "See? You bleed just like." She stopped. The cut on Izuku's chest was already gone. The blood remained, but the skin underneath was pristine. Izuku looked down at his ruined hoodie. He sighed, a long, weary exhalation of steam. "That cost $20, he said. He looked up at Yukari. His expression hadn't changed. He wasn't raging. He was just bored. And that terrified her more than anger would have. "You're boring," Izuku decided. He bent down, picked up the bronze washbasin with one hand, crumpling the metal rim like it was aluminum foil, and tossed it into a nearby trash can. "Let's go," he said to his entourage. He walked away, leaving the child witch hovering in confusion. "Hey!" Yukari shouted. "Don't ignore me! I'm a genius! I skipped grades. I'm smarter than you." Izuku didn't look back. Being smart doesn't mean you're not annoying. Yukari watched him go, her face turning red with humiliation. She gripped her wand until her knuckles turned white. "I'll show him," she whispered. "I'll show all of them." History class was excruciating. The teacher, a centaur who loved the sound of his own voice, was droning on about the Goblin Wars of 1654. Izuku sat in the back, stitching his hoodie with a needle and thread he kept in his bag. He had to learn to sew. His clothing budget couldn't keep up with his lifestyle. Yukari Sendo was in this class, despite her age. She sat in the front row, answering every question before the teacher could finish asking it. "Correct, Miss Sendo," the centaur sighed. "But please raise your hand. The other students are too slow," Yukari declared, looking around the room with disdain. "It's painful to wait for their tiny brains to catch up," the class grumbled. A group of lizard men in the middle row glared at her. "She's so cocky," one whispered. "Just a half-breed witch. Doesn't belong here." Izuku's ear twitched. Half-breed. He paused his stitching. He knew that tone. He knew the specific frequency of bigotry. It was the same tone people used when they called him quirkless or villain. He looked at Yukari. She sat straight, chin high, projecting an air of absolute superiority. But Izuku saw the tension in her small shoulders. He saw the way she gripped her pen too tightly. "She's posturing," Izuku analyzed. "She's lonely, so she makes herself untouchable by being better than everyone else. It's a defense mechanism." It was the same thing he did with his anger. She did it with her intellect. "Don't get involved," he told himself. "She attacked you? She ruined your hoodie." But the Hyde was restless. The Hyde hated the whispers of the lizard men more than it hated the witch. Lunchtime. Izuku managed to lose his shadows. He sent Mocha and Kuruma on a wild goose chase by telling them he was going to the roof, then hiding in the maintenance closet of the boiler room to eat his raw steak in peace. It was hot, dark, and smelled of oil. It was perfect. He finished his meal and stepped out into the courtyard, intending to head to the library. "Give it back!" The scream was shrill and desperate. Izuku stopped. He stood in the shadow of the main building. Across the courtyard, near the decorative fountain, a scene was unfolding. Yukari Sendo was surrounded. 3 students, the lizard men from history class, had cornered her. One of them, a tall, green-scaled brute with a mohawk, was holding Yukari's heart-shaped wand high above his head. Yukari was jumping, trying to reach it, but she was too short. Without her wand, a witch's power was severely limited. "Look at her hop," the mohawk lizard man laughed. "Like a little toad." "I said give it back," Yukari yelled, tears welling in her eyes. "That's mine." "You don't need magic," another lizard man sneered. "You're just a half-breed. Your dad was a human, right? That makes you basically trash." Yukari froze. "Don't talk about my dad." "Or what?" The third bully shoved her. Yukari fell backward, landing hard on the pavement. She scraped her knees. "You think because you're smart, you're better than us?" The mohawk lizard man leaned down, his face twisting into a cruel grin. "You're just a kid. You're weak. You shouldn't even be at this academy." He looked at the wand in his hand. "Oops," he said. He squeezed. Crack. The pink, heart-shaped wand snapped in two. Yukari stared at the broken pieces falling to the ground. Her world shattered with them. That wand was a gift. It was her focus. It was her protection. She began to cry. Not a defiant cry, but a broken, sobbing wail. "Ah, is the baby crying?" The bullies laughed. Izuku watched from the shadows. His heart rate was 60 beats per minute. Resting. Then he heard the word. Weak. His heart rate jumped to 120. Then he saw the tears. It wasn't the crying that angered him. It was the cause. They had broken her tool, mocked her heritage, and used their physical advantage to humiliate her. It was the tyranny of the mob. The magma in Izuku's gut erupted. The enhancement flooded his system. "Kill them," the Hyde roared. "Tear their scales off." Izuku stepped out of the shadows. He didn't run. He walked. But his walk was terrifying. His head was lowered, his shoulders bunched up near his ears. Green lightning began to flicker around his hands. Hey! The shout didn't come from Izuku. It came from Mocha. Mocha, Tsukun, and Kuruma had just entered the courtyard and seen the bullying. Leave her alone! Mocha shouted, running forward. The lizard men turned. Oh look, it's the vampire, the Mohawk sneered. And the human pet. You want to play too? You broke her wand. Kuruma yelled, unfurling her wings. That's low, even for lizards. We're teaching her a lesson, the bully growled. Monsters need to know their place. Half-breeds are at the bottom. Mocha was about to retort, maybe even fight, but then she felt it. The air pressure dropped. The birds in the nearby trees suddenly took flight, squawking in panic. A shadow fell over the group. The lizard man turned around. Standing 5 feet away was Izuku Midoriya. But he looked bigger than usual. His hoodie seemed too tight. His hands were clenched into fists so tight the skin was white. His eyes were glowing like radioactive emeralds. He wasn't looking at Mocha. He wasn't looking at Yukari. He was looking at the Mohawk lizard man. You broke it, Izuku said. His voice was barely a whisper, but it carried across the wind. Huh! The bully blinked. The wand? Yeah. It was a toy. So Izuku moved. It was a blur. 1 second he was 5 feet away. The next, his hand was wrapped around the lizardman's throat. He lifted the bully off the ground. One-handed. It belonged to her, Izuku said. And you broke it. I'll let go. The bully choked, clawing at Izuku's arm. His claws tore the sleeve, scratching Izuku's skin. The scratches healed instantly. You called her weak, Izuku continued, his voice rising in volume. You gathered 3 of you to corner a child. You think that makes you strong? He squeezed. The lizardman's eyes bulged. Hey! Put him down! The other 2 bullies charged. One whipped his tail at Izuku. The other tried to bite his leg. Izuku didn't even look at them. As the tail swung toward him, he caught it with his free hand. He caught the whip-crack motion dead in the air. He yanked. The second lizard man was pulled off his feet, flying through the air to slam into the third one. They tumbled into a heap of scales and limbs. Izuku turned his attention back to the leader in his grip. Strength isn't about numbers, Izuku hissed, bringing the bully's face close to his own. The Hyde's eyes, slit, feral, terrifying, bore into the lizard's soul. Strength is standing alone. Strength is endurance. He threw the bully. He didn't throw him far, just straight down. Slam! The lizard man hit the pavement. The concrete cracked in a spiderweb pattern. The bully groaned, the wind knocked out of him, too terrified to move. Izuku stood over them. He breathed heavily, steam venting from his mouth. The courtyard was silent. Students watching from the windows held their breath. Izuku turned to Yukari. She was still sitting on the ground, staring at the pieces of her wand, tears streaming down her face. She looked up at him, her eyes wide with fear. She expected him to yell at her. Or maybe ignore her. Izuku walked over to her. His heavy boots stopped inches from her knees. He looked down. Stop crying, he said. It wasn't gentle. It was a command. Yukari sniffled. Be but my wand, they said I'm weak. You are weak, Izuku said. Mocha gasped. Midoriya-kun. That's cruel. Izuku ignored Mocha. He kept his eyes on the child. You're crying on the ground, Izuku said cold. You're waiting for someone to save you. You're waiting for an apology. That makes you pray. He crouched down so he was eye level with her. His glowing eyes dimmed slightly, returning to a more human shade of green. The world doesn't care if you're smart, Izuku said. It doesn't care if you're right. It will chew you up and spit you out if you let it. He pointed a scarred finger at her chest. Crying attracts predators. It tells them you've given up. Yukari trembled. Then, what do I do? I can't fight them. I'm small. Get angry, Izuku whispered. The words hung in the air. Take that sadness, Izuku said, tapping his own chest over his heart. Take the humiliation. And burn it. Turn it into fuel. Don't cry because they broke your wand. Get angry that they dared to touch it. Hate them for it. And use that hate to make sure they never do it again. He stood up. If you're a genius, act like one. Build a better wand. Learn a spell they can't block. Outthink them. But never, ever let them see you cry. Yukari stared at him. She wiped her eyes with her sleeve. She looked at the broken wand. Then she looked at the groaning bullies. Something in her expression shifted. The sorrow evaporated, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. Get angry, she whispered to herself. Izuku turned to walk away. The rage was fading, leaving him tired. Midoriya-kun, Mocha said softly, stepping into his path. You were trying to help her, weren't you? I was stopping the noise, Izuku grunted. Crying children are annoying. He walked past her. Suddenly, he felt a small tug on his hoodie. He stopped. He looked back. Yukari was standing there. She wasn't crying anymore. She was holding the pieces of her wand in one hand, and gripping the hem of his hoodie with the other. Thank you, she said. Izuku stared at her hand on his clothes. Usually, he would shake it off. He hated being touched. Don't thank me, he said. I didn't do it for you. I know, Yukari said. A small, mischievous smile returned to her face. You did it because you're a big soft underneath all that muscle. Izuku's eye twitched. I am not soft. I am dense muscle fiber and repressed trauma. Can I call you Big Brother? Yukari asked. No. Okay, Big Brother. Yukari chirped. I'm going to fix my wand. And then I'm going to turn those lizards into newts. She let go of him and ran off toward the dorms, her energy completely restored. Izuku watched her go. He felt a headache coming on. Big Brother? Kuruma giggled, sidling up to him. Does that make me the big sister-in-law? It makes you a target, Izuku threatened. He walked away, but the heaviness in his chest felt slightly lighter. 2 days later, the library was quiet. Izuku sat at a corner table, surrounded by books on advanced calculus and structural engineering. He found math relaxing. Numbers didn't lie. Numbers didn't have egos. That equation is wrong. Izuku didn't look up. It's not wrong. It's theoretical physics. Yukari climbed onto the chair opposite him. She was wearing a new hat, and she held a new wand. This one looked like it was made of metal and carbon fiber. You're using the human formula, Yukari said, pulling a massive tome of magical theory out of her bag. If you apply the chaos mana theorem, the variable x becomes infinite. Izuku looked up. He frowned. He looked at her book. Mana doesn't follow thermodynamic laws, he argued. It creates energy from nothing. That violates entropy. That's because magic is the violation of entropy, you meathead, Yukari grinned. Here, look at this. She slid the book over. For the next 2 hours, the masterless monster and the child which argued in hushed whispers about the intersection of quantum mechanics and spellcasting. Mocha and Tsukun watched from a few tables away. I've never seen him talk this much, Tsukun whispered. He respects her mind, Mocha noted, smiling. She's not afraid of him anymore. And she's not trying to fight him. They're just nerds. Scary nerds, Tsukun added. Izuku pointed at a diagram. So if I compress the atmospheric pressure using pure strength, I could theoretically mimic a wind spell without mana? Technically yes, Yukari nodded, adjusting her hat. But you need to move your arm at Mach 2. Your tendons would snap. My tendons regenerate, Izuku noted. Then yes. Big Brother can punch the air into a cannonball. Izuku smirked. It was a small, barely noticeable twitch of the lips. But it was there. Useful, he muttered. The student council room. While Izuku was discussing physics in the library, a different kind of conversation was happening in the highest tower of the academy. The room was dark, lit only by the red glow of the moon through the stained glass windows. Kuyu, the head of the security committee, the student council police, sat behind a massive oak desk. He was a handsome young man with long dark hair, but his eyes held the predatory glint of a fox demon. Report, he said. A subordinate, a shadowy figure, placed a file on the desk. It was thick. Subject, Izuku Midoriya, the subordinate read. Freshman. Species Hyde variant. No, master. Kuyu picked up the file. He flipped through the photos. Izuku breaking the bully's arm. Izuku throwing Mocha. Izuku crushing the lizardmen. He's causing chaos, Kuyu murmured. He hospitalized Saizo. He defeated Inner Mocha in a skirmish. He broke Kuruma Kurono's charm. And now he's adopted the witch. The students are starting to fear him more than they fear us, the subordinate noted. Rumors are spreading that he's the strongest in the school. Some are saying he's S-class, Kuyu scoffed. A Hyde? S-class? Impossible. They are slave beasts. Genetic trash designed for labor and war. This one is different, sir. He regenerates. He gets stronger as he gets angrier. And he has no inhibitor. Kuyu closed the file. He tapped his finger on the cover. Order is the foundation of this academy, Kuyu stated. Monsters need hierarchy. If a stray dog starts thinking he's a wolf, the whole pack falls apart. He stood up, walking to the window. He looked down at the campus. We need to put a collar on him, Kuyu said. Or put him down. How do we proceed? He seems resistant to intimidation. Kuyu smiled. It was a fox's smile, cunning and cruel. Every beast has a weakness. If he doesn't care about himself, we target the things around him. He claims to be a loner, but he has gathered a flock. The vampire. The human. The succubus. The witch. He turned back to the subordinate. Prepare the committee. We're going to squeeze his friends. Let's see if the masterless beast breaks, or if he bites. The next day, Izuku felt at the moment he stepped onto campus. The atmosphere had changed. The usual chatter was subdued. Students were looking at him, then quickly looking away. But it wasn't the usual fear. It was anticipation. He walked to his locker. On the metal door someone had painted a red X. Vandalism, Izuku muttered. Childish. He opened the locker. A note fell out. Report to the security committee headquarters immediately. Izuku crumpled the note in one hand. He tossed it into the trash. No. He turned to head to class. Midoriya-kun! Sukun ran up to him. He was breathless, sweating more than usual. Midoriya! Have you seen Moka-san? Izuku frowned. No. Why? She didn't come to homeroom, Sukun said, panic rising in his voice. And Kurumu isn't answering her phone. And I went to find Yukari, but her dorm room was tossed. Izuku stopped walking. The background noise of the hallway seemed to fade out. The heartbeat in his ears grew louder. Tossed? Izuku asked. Books everywhere, Sukun said. And there was a note. It said the beast needs to be housebroken. Izuku stood very still. The magma in his gut wasn't bubbling. It was freezing over. A cold, hard rage that was far more dangerous than the hot, explosive kind. He had told them. He had told them all he wanted was peace. He had told them he didn't want friends, but they had forced themselves into his life. The vampire with her juice boxes. The succubus with her bento. The witch with her physics books. Even the shaking human. They were his annoyances. His pests. And someone else had touched them. Where is the security committee headquarters? Izuku asked. His voice was devoid of all inflection. Sukun swallowed hard. In the East Tower. But Midoriya, you can't go there. Kuyu is an S-class monster. He has a whole army of enforcers. Izuku turned toward the East Tower. Sukun, Izuku said. Why yes? Go to the infirmary. Why? Because, Izuku said, his eyes beginning to glow, the green light spilling out from under his hood like toxic smoke. I'm going to need them to prep every bed they have. He started walking. With every step, the floor tiles cracked under his boots. Thud, thud, thud. The Hyde was awake. And for the first time since coming to Yokai Academy, Izuku wasn't trying to hold it back. He was letting it drive.